Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Otis Noble III, and welcome to LA Social Science. This is the e-forum connected to the Division of Social Science here at UCLA. My name is Otis Noble III again, and today I have the immense pleasure to interview Professor Paul Ng. Professor Ng is, it's very timely in many ways that we have the opportunity to speak with him. And you will get a chance to see that this is one of our treasures here at UCLA. So without further ado, welcome, Professor.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So just to kind of run down a little bit of your resume and some of the things that you are connected to, Professor Ng has done research on labor markets and minority and immigrant displacement in high-tech workers. He works with work and spatial transportation mismatch and environmental justice. He is currently the director of the Center for Neighborhood Knowledge and the editor of the AAPI Nexus. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Professor Ng during Asian American Heritage Month. So that gives us an opportunity to really kind of hear about some of the things that may be happening within that community, as Professor Ng is a active part of that community. So, Professor Ng, could you talk to us a little bit about how, and this is just because of what we're going through, how the COVID-19 pandemic has really kind of affected the AAPI community?
It has affected the Asian American Pacific Islander community in a number of ways. Just like any other population and communities, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have been impacted by the health crisis, by the economic crisis, as well as the social crisis. But I think AAPIs are somewhat unique in this whole arena. And that is because of the politics and the xenophobia. So what we have heard from our community stakeholders, our community partners, is that there has been a number of negative impacts well beyond that experienced by other communities and the community as a whole. And that's, again, because of the xenophobic racist rhetoric that came out of the White House. It is because it has flamed racism against Asian Americans and Asian American businesses. And we also see that in the Pacific Islander communities.
Now, just for clarification, are we talking about the current administration? Or are we talking about the past administration? Because I know there's some work still with this new administration that needs to be, done.
I think clearly we're talking about Trump out and his White House. When he goes on the news and talks about the China flu, when he talks about Kung flu, when he uses these sort of racist rhetoric, he is essentially fanning the flame of anti-Asian racism. So clearly, that's where the blame lies. One of our current research with a partner, community partner, when we asked businesses, have they experienced an increase in the prevalence of racist incidents? And 3/4 of them said yes. And when we asked, why, the most widely given response is around the politicization of the pandemic, particularly the effort to paint Chinese and Asians as the cause of that. And again, what that does, it adds fuel to this racist reaction that we're seeing in terms of attacks on Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, both individually and in terms of their businesses.
So talk about some of your research and how, you all are doing work on the ground to, all the rhetoric is there, and we unfortunately get way too much of that as it relates to, our ingestion of the media. But talk about how some of your research and how the optimization of, having access to what's happening, to the individuals, how that really kind of plays out in the work you do.
So one of the ways we approach this is trying to understand whether or not this racism is systemic. And what we mean by that being systemic is that it cuts across many different arenas. Certainly, we are very disheartened by the racist incidents, the attacks on Asian Americans, the stabbings, the insults are happening. And those things are very concerning. But when we think about whether or not it's systemic, it means that there's a greater depth to what's happening. There's a greater breadth. And it's manifested in many different ways. My particular interest and focus and expertise is how does it translate into economic outcomes, economic impacts? How does it affect the workers? How does it affect our businesses? How does it affect our neighborhoods? And so our research is really trying to answer that in real time because we're in the middle of a crisis. And what I mean by real time is trying to get information in a way that we could turn around results in weeks rather than the normal academic way of turning things around in years. And so our research is really grounded in part from what we heard from community folks. They were telling us that the impact on businesses came well before the lockdown, before the stay-at-home orders. And that's because of the xenophobic reaction and the fear. That during the lockdown, that businesses declined dramatically, and their sense was as much more than other businesses. And then when we got to the point of relaxing some of the stay-at-home measures, the recovery, our partial recovery, was not as robust in these communities. So that's sort of what drives us in terms of trying to figure out and document and test whether or not what we're hearing on the ground has empirical evidence. And getting empirical evidence is very challenging, as you know. And as we also know from some of our colleagues in social science, how do we get real data at a level, at a micro level that allows us to really understand the pandemic impacts?
So talk to us a little bit about the big data initiative that you are connected with, because I feel like that's what I'm hearing when you talk about the research and what you all are, able to gain as it relates to having the relationships on the ground. How does big data play into that?
So one of the things that the pandemic has really forced us to do is rethink in a radical way, how do we conduct research? And how do we sort of really get as near real-time analysis as possible? The crisis is not waiting for us in a traditional way to produce the scholarship, and nor should it. And I'm very proud that UCLA and social sciences have stepped up in terms of addressing these. So what that has done is for us to be innovative in terms of the data that we use. We were very fortunate because we have had agreements with two vendors who provide smartphone data for very precise locations. The two are SafeGraph and StreetLight. And that actually allows us to track, for example, traffic, foot traffic, vehicle traffic to a store, to a neighborhood. And we could track this week by week. And we could see the patterns, for example, of how many people are going to Chinatown and the stores in Chinatown, as opposed to going to stores throughout the county. So this has forced us to come and use non-traditional data, big data, to do this sort of real-time analysis. It also required us to change the way we did things. We're very fortunate the campus has given us access to their supercomputer. When we talk about big data, we mean big data. It means big data you can't handle on your desktop. And so we've been very fortunate to been able to have access to our supercomputer to do the front end processing of the data. And again, so it's changing the way we're doing things, hopefully in a way that it produces insights that helps inform the community, decision makers, and other stakeholders, and the media. And what we have found essentially confirms what people have been telling us on the ground, that indeed Chinatown has been disproportionately impacted.
Yeah. No, and thankfully I got a chance to meet some of the scholars you have connected to the Center for the Neighborhood Knowledge. Talk to us a little bit more about the center, because I was very much, just in awe of the brilliance of some of your students and scholars that are connected to the center. So talk a little bit more about it if you can, and the work you are doing.
Be happy to do that. So the center has two foci. One is that we believe that neighborhoods are important units in society. It is a community. There are other types of community that doesn't have space or sort of spread out throughout the world. We have social networks that connects populations here in Europe and Asia. But we also believe that neighborhoods are very important. It's where we live most of our lives. It is where we have a sense of who we are. It is a place where we interact intensively with others. It is a sense of having common institutions. And so we think neighborhoods are a very important focus. The other focus that we have at the center is on inequality, and particularly along class and race lines. Those are two huge challenges to society if we want a fair and just society. So we heavily focus on that. In March of 2020, we launched the COVID Equity Research Initiative. The biggest challenge is that we had no resources, we had no funds. So the entrepreneurial method is you tap the resources you have, you tap the social networks you have. So we've been very fortunate that people have given their time, my friends, my family, my colleagues. So they believe in the importance of this type of research. Throughout the project, we partner with over a dozen other research centers, other faculty. I'm forever grateful for their contributions. We also been very fortunate to have a talented group of students, both graduates and undergraduates. We're up to now 14 students working on various aspects of the pandemic, as well as other equity research. So it's not that, the center alone has been able to do that. It really represents different parts of the campus, different parts of social sciences, coming together in a common goal and an agenda.
Yeah, and you all have an amazing YouTube site that I encourage folks who, potentially are, watching this, go out and look for CNK, correct?
Easiest way is type in UCLA Center for Neighborhood Knowledge channel.
And phenomenal material up there right now. So before I give you your time back, because I know you're doing amazing work, and you're off to your next meeting after this, talk a little bit about your ultimate goal as it relates to some of the research and what you're doing with the center.
I think one of our philosophy is that we should understand that we, as part of the academy, are very privileged. I really sort of appreciate, what UCLA has offered me throughout the years. It is a privilege. It is, however, one that comes with responsibility, or should come with responsibilities. There are many types of responsibility. We should be good at teaching. We should be good in terms of being great colleagues. But there's a larger obligation in my mind. That is, we need to give back to society in many different ways. Historically, we have not been great about doing the type of research that helps marginalized communities and populations. And that's what we really need to do. That's part of what we hope to do. The initiative is a part of that. That is, how do we engage in the larger community so we can contribute through our expertise, our ability to do research, our ability to analyze information, how can we do it in a way that helps society, decision makers, community folks, come up with better solutions, better policies and programs. There's a huge commitment now today to racial and social justice. And in my opinion, UCLA has the opportunity to play a very meaningful role in that. And it should do it through its privilege and its knowledge and its research.
Definitely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Professor Ung, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate, you taking the time to speak to us. And don't forget to subscribe to LA Social Science.